Hello, this is the Air Force Integrated Personnel and Pay System, AFIPPS. I'm Colonel Sean Robert McElhaney Pahia.
And I'm Eric Cuevas.
And today we're going to go over, this is the first briefing to go over what is AFIPPS and why we're doing AFIPPS. Next slide. Here's our agenda, but overall we're going to give you a history of why we're doing AFIPPS, program schedule of AFIPPS, what has happened in the past of AFIPPS, some of the development. More importantly for you in the field is what is AFIPPS going to do for me, and how does it really change our business processes, and how as a community are we, for the Air Force, going to react to this? And then for future, how do you get more information with the change management? How will the training come about, and how do you access the information that we're providing today? Next slide.
So let's begin by talking about the current environment. First, doing business in the legacy environment is very expensive. If you are not aware, it costs the Air Force over $39 million a year for DFAS to execute personnel and pay transactions. A primary driver of the cost stemmed from all the manual workarounds, which we have well over 100 today. I dare say we collectively have forgotten how to process a transaction correctly, as the system workarounds have become the norm, vice the exception. Not only is it expensive, but the enterprise simply is not able to pay out airmen timely. While OSD has a well-known standard of 98% timeliness for pay, the Air Force has consistently hovered around 95%. Some may say, that's not too bad. But I would counter and say, it is not bad unless you are one of the 50 to 60,000 airmen yearly who have a pay problem, which often takes months for the issue to be addressed and fixed. It is important to note, this is not to say our FM, DFAS, and A1 airmen are not doing a great job. Quite frankly, I believe they should be commended for achieving a 95% timeliness rate, as they do this despite a great number of impediments today, which are very difficult to overcome. Slide. So, here's the crux of the problem. Today we have a modern Oracle-based personnel system called MilPDS, sending data to an antiquated COBOL-based pay system called DJMS. Simply does not work well and is not very flexible, and ultimately does not meet the needs of the 21st century warfighter. Slide. As I just mentioned, MilPDS and DJMS do not work well, and regardless of the system issues, our airmen must get paid. So, the only alternative is for personnel, FM, and DFAS to revert to a manual processing, which is a heavy lift, and none of the organizations has the manpower to sustain extensive manual workload in the future. This is why AFIPPS must come to fruition, as our airmen deserve to be paid timely and accurately, and our personnelists, FMers, and DFAS technicians deserve a system which allows them to provide and to do their jobs without all the manual interventions that is the norm today. Slide.
Now that we know the problem and we know what we've been struggling over the past several decades, how come it's been taking so long for the Air Force to get to a modern pay system? And this is the history that must be understood across the field to understand why we have not modernized MilPDS over the past and why we've been waiting for the solution. And what started out in the early 2000s to 2008, there was a program called the Defense Integrated Military HR System, DIMERS. It was supposed to be all four services were supposed to get on the same HR and pay system. In 2008, that process failed, and they were trying to do that on the Oracle PeopleSoft software. After 2008, it was split up between the services to build their own personnel and pay system. So the Air Force, doing all that effort for the first half of that decade, decided to stay on the Oracle PeopleSoft platform and try to put onto the new platform the new HR system from scratch, including pay. What's happening is this was a huge elephant to lift and it was nearly impossible to make happen. We had several setbacks and everything else. So in 2015, the Secretary of the Air Force decided to stop the program and have a relook. What was also happening between 2008 and 2015, we had the MilPDS update. MilPDS is sitting on Oracle e-Business Suite, a modern platform. And in 2011, 2012, it was determined that this platform was hitting its end of life and needed to be upgraded. The Air Force was sitting on version 10 at the time, highly customized. Well, in 2013, the Air Force successfully upgraded the MilPDS platform to version 12. Now, what many of you don't know is the MilPDS today, the professional user interface that you do the tables directly in and out of. What you don't know is what Oracle EBS Suite actually has in totality. Oracle EBS Suite can do everything from talent management to payroll to timelines to core HR in its own platform. It can also do self-service and workflow. But we never turned it on because the expectation was in the past we were going to use PeopleSoft. But after 2015, it was decided that PeopleSoft was not going to work, and we already had most of our HR core processes inside the MilPDS platform across all three components. Therefore, it's decided it was a safer route to go onto the Oracle EBS Suite, turn on the payroll system, turn on absence management, which is in the payroll system, and it is our leave management to replace LeaveWeb. Now for the RegAF, you already have LeaveWeb, so this will be very similar to LeaveWeb, but it'll be tied directly into MilPDS. For the Guard and the Reserve, who are still doing paperwork, this will automate your leave processes. And to also help with all this, which is a very powerful system, is self-service and workflow. So for the community, you may be thinking, okay, am I using this professional user interface for the self-service and workflow? And the answer is no, because self-service and workflow on the Oracle EBS version 12 is we can use HTML files. For the common user, this is files that can look exactly like a web or a mobile device. And that was decided. The next slide. So what is the apples and oranges between the programs? How do we believe that Oracle EBS is going to be more successful than Oracle PeopleSoft? Well, under the PeopleSoft, we had a monolithic redesign of the entire system. We were going to take our entire HR processes and go to scratch. That means rebuilding virtual MPF, that's MyPersite, VPC, and even MilPDS. Everything had to be rebuilt. Under Dimers, it was controlled by the Army, and Air Force did not accomplish any coding during any of those phases. Also, what was happening under the previous Oracle PeopleSoft processes is the PMO, the Program Management Office, run through AQ, was handled up at Hanscom. Functional Management Office for A1 and FM was handled out of the Pentagon. And the functional experts were all down in San Antonio trying to build the system and build the designs. So no one was in the same place and no one can get on the same page. So we took lessons learned from that process, and now we're on the Business Suite. We're basically modernizing our current platform, which has a lot of capability that is unaware to a lot of people, and we'll provide those documentation on the website you'll get later. Also, we're more focused on just payroll and leave. We're not going to bite and eat the entire elephant at once. We're going to concentrate on what is truly broken and needs to be fixed today, and then over time, modernize everything else. Third bullet is everyone is on the same page. And why? It's because the Program Management Office was moved from Hanscom to San Antonio. The Functional Management Office was moved from the Pentagon to San Antonio. And all the functionals are in San Antonio. And in fact, the system integrator, Accenture, that we just hired on board is based in San Antonio. And what is different than all the previous efforts is we are actually now coding the system, and we have functional expertise looking at that system right now.
So, what does increment 1 mean? First, we will be taking advantage of the fact that we have a modern personnel system. We will be bolting on the EBS payroll function to pay out airmen timely and accurately. We will be turning on absence management to ensure we account for leave. We will be utilizing self-service to allow members to review their records and initiate pay transactions, thus minimizing the need to wait in the pay and personnel line and to spend more time on the flight line. And finally, we will use workflow to route leave and pay action requests. Slide.
So how is this all working out? This is the program schedule, and we've been on schedule since FY17. Nothing has changed. What we're highlighting here is we have Accenture on board, which I described earlier. Fit gap is complete. So what is fit gap? Fit gap is, the fit is if I load the software directly to the computer, it's going to do everything I've requested it to do. And gap means that, hey, if I directly load this to the computer, what is the system not doing what I need it to do? And in those discussions, you decide, what am I going to do to the software, either configuring it, like changing the font size, changing from Courier to Times New Roman, like we do in Word or PowerPoint, to complex to actual coding. And in those discussions, we figured out how do we get from what the software out of the box does to where I need to do to execute Air Force capabilities. And we've made it through FitGap, and that is a big step. So then we work through COAs, courses of actions, to develop how we're going to deal with those gaps to meet the needs of the Air Force. And those have been resolved and solutions have been created. And now we're in the development. Then you see the arrow going over to the development, and you're seeing sprints. Now, I'll get into a slide to describe sprints. More or less, we're trying to build the software in these 4 interims, and we'll be testing it throughout the capabilities to ensure that we are delivering what we need at the end of the day. Next slide. So this slide provides better detail on what is sprints and what's going on. In the upper part of the slide, through the quarters and such, you're seeing deliver capabilities from the MilPDS portion of it. As we're trying to update the platform, like you see there in Q2, home address adjustments, we have your home address, but we also need your county to work with taxes. We're trying to bring in your dependent data from DEERS. We're trying to work that interface, so instead of us manually updating MilPDS, we're getting that data feed directly from DEERS. We're trying to ask you, the field, to reduce the pay cases so we can make sure that the data is clean when we go live with AFIPPS. And we're also doing some other AFIPPS HR changes on the MilPDS system to make sure the HR is ready to go. Also behind the scenes, what is happening is we're building up the infrastructure, because the infrastructure currently only allows the personnel team and the functional users to use MilPDS. But when we go live, we're going live with self-service and workflow, which means everyone in the Air Force needs access to MilPDS. So to prevent the system clogging down on its own weight, we are currently this year building up that infrastructure, building up the pipelines, building up the server space, so that way we can test and make sure that everyone, when they log in, the system is working and not slowing down. Then the plan is to initiate self-service. It'll be a basic capability to allow an individual to log in, see their data, but no transactions yet. It's just to be able to understand, can you log in, and also test that infrastructure. So then when we eventually go live with the payroll, we know the infrastructure is working and is working at the speeds we need to. Then you get into the middle with the sprints and the payroll sprints. And what a sprint is, we're trying to do agile methodology. And for the layman, imagine you're building a house. There's 2 ways. There's first the waterfall approach, which we have done over the decades. And the waterfall approach is I give my floor plans to the builder, and I'll come back in a year and the builder shows me the house. And as we know, if I'm not in there as they're building the house, they may get the walls correctly, but they may get the details incorrect, which makes me not want the house. In this case, under the sprints, we have a total force team from all 3 components, including A1, FM, and DFAS, functional experts with the coders. So as they go through these sprints, which happen 3 weeks at a time, they're working the requirement and building out the code. Then they're testing the code to make sure that they're delivering what we, the functional community, need to accurately pay these individuals. So when we go back to the house example, not only do I hand the floor plans over to the builder, I'm there every week with the builder as they start building the foundation. They put up the walls. They're starting to work on the kitchen. You get to look at the colors of the flooring, the cabinet space. We're looking at all the details of that house as it's being built. So when the vendor eventually gives us the house is what we expect. And if there's any tweaks that need to happen, it's not expensive or time consuming. We're able to do it on the fly. It's the same thing we're doing with the software. When the developer is done with the software, it's pretty much meeting what we need. And the developer is currently scheduled to be done with the software this time next year in 2020. So even though the software is ready, we don't want to field it yet because there's other things that need to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to do a data migration from DJMS to test the platform. Even though we've been testing it on the fly as we build out these payroll capabilities, we want to bring in that live data from DJMS and test it in parallel to DJMS and see where are those differences. Is AFIPPS accurately paying the airmen? So then when we go live, we don't have these issues. We know what's going to happen. Also, what's happening behind the scenes is this allows us to do training to you in the field, to give you that change management training, to let you understand how is this going to work? How is this going to automate? What is actually being automated? How does the self-service workflow happen? How do we as an Air Force run payroll? And it's not as scary as you think. But at the end of the day, it gives us 2020 to do that change management, to do the training, and to do the testing to make sure that when we go live in 21, it is working. Next slide. So this is really a picture of the Agile team. You do an Agile methodology. And even though you see a lot of people in civilian clothes, they're over at the Accenture building. That is a total force team, functionals, providing Accenture critical information for the functionality of what we needed to do from all perspectives, all viewpoints. Not only just a Reg F, but what's the nuances that the Guard and Reserve bring in? What are the nuances that finance looks at? What are the nuances that DFAS looks at as we work from giving a person eligibility for a pay? Basically, I'm giving a person an assignment to a location, and then now their location has to have BAH or COLA, or etc., all the way to actually paying it out, and then all the after effects. But this is a picture of the team at work. Next slide. So here's the scenario, just to give you a baseline. Okay, what is it in for me? What's happening to us in the community? So this is just a simple, the next couple of slides is just a simple way to walk you through. And in future videos, we will actually walk you through other scenarios live with question and answers capabilities so we can get you better understanding of what we are delivering with AFIPPS. In today's world, you can have mill-to-mill married with a dependent. And what we tend to do in the military, sometimes I have to send you to an OCONUS assignment where the other military member says CONUS. And that member may go to an OCONUS assignment where there's no government quarters available on base, so they have to go off base. So what does that member have to do today? So what happens today is we have to have, that member has to have 4 meetings, has to talk to the personnel team to make sure that they arrive on the assignment and we're able to do their duty status update and make sure the date arrivals update. We have to validate the proof of dependency to make sure, do you still have that child? We worked out with DEERS, and we also worked out with MilPDS. Then the customer has to then go to finance to work their BAAs, the NEHA, and all these applications that they're trying to do. So they're filling out all these paperwork and collecting data on the individual with their social security and all this information. Then that member has to go to housing and talk to the unit commander to approve this stuff and to validate this stuff, to eventually update multiple systems, DJMS AC, DJMS RC, and MilPDS. And what you have on the system is all these updates have to be made. In this case, we're doing DJMS AC for the active to make up the DFAS to pay the individual, which can take a long time to do. That's today's world. That's the world we're living with. Next slide. Tomorrow on AFIPPS, we're trying to work on interfaces, collect the data once, and then use workflow and self-service, get any updates or approvals, speed up the process and make it happen. So now the member just comes in, fills out the assignment form, the system validates that the person is here, the system is already getting a data interface with DEERS to know that, yes, they have a dependent that is living with the military member in the CONUS side, so we have to work the dependent pay. That's already in the system, so we're collecting that data. We're doing a notification to the member saying, hey, you are eligible for other capabilities through self-service, fill out some paperwork in the system. Then workflow is able to workflow it directly to housing, directly to the commander. The commander validates that information, keys it to the system, and then the system executes the process. So we go from the customer having to meet 4 people, schedule those appointments, and hope that they get it right the first time, to you meet once, and then the system takes it from there, and then the individual takes control of their pay with help from the commander and any agencies that have to validate in the system. That's what we're trying to do with AFIPPS. And over the next couple of weeks and months, we'll go through other processes and we'll actually have live speeches. That way you can ask those questions and get more detail into scenarios like this. This is just to give you a taste of what we're building in the system right now. Next slide. Also, what's happening is you're probably going, well, if payroll is coming to the Air Force, what does that mean with manpower? What does that mean with our processes? Is this more work? Is this less work? That's still to be determined. And we have a team working with the functional communities, Guard, Reserve, REGAF, FM, and DFAS, A1, are all working together to work a timeline to make sure that we are organized, trained, and equipped to be successful when we go live in 21. Even after 21, and we're live with the system, we are already setting up with the manpower agency to do a manpower study to make sure, did we get it right, and where do we need to make adjustments, and where do we need to adjust resources. Not beforehand like what happened to us in the previous decade. This slide just gives you an overview of what's happening and how we're going to do it. From Eric and I's perspective, looking at AFIPPS, if we are able to automate what we're supposed to automate, your workload actually goes down because you're not doing all these fixes to the payroll, which is the problem we have today. You're not doing all those CMS cases. You're not working with having to deal with the customer coming in every time because there is a pay issue. Having to now analyze where's that issue coming from, what's the issue, where's the data malfunction, what paperwork needs to happen. With AFIPPS, that should all be in the same system to happen. But we have a team behind the scenes building out the business processes, and you'll get more information on this throughout this year. Next slide. Now this is the get off the stage slide of the change management. So how are you getting this information? In the past, we have been very tentative on providing you information because we don't want to sell you a bag of goods. We learned under Dimers and AFIPPS round 1, there was a lot of sales pitches, but nothing delivered. So this team under the new AFIPPS strategy has made it very purposeful that we want to get through the acquisition strategy, get through the requirement strategy, get through the fit gap, and start developing the system so that when we talk to you, we can literally say, we are building this. And this is going to work. And throughout this year, as the team is building this stuff out, we will be able to show videos on the capability as it happens and prepare you in 2020 when we need to bring you in to train you on the platform and show you all the cool stuff coming out. So the change management team is going to start bringing out more messaging. We're going to bring out more communications. Just like this video, it's the start of all the digital and internet communication that we're trying to provide out. And the team is also going to go to outreach and engagements where whenever you have those big conferences at your MAGCOMs or even at the Air Force level, the team's going to start coming out and you're going to hear more about AFIPPS. So don't be surprised that you might be the only one going, what is AFIPPS all about? You're not the only one because we've been concentrating with senior leadership in Congress to make sure that we get this right. And now that we know that we're getting it right, we're now informing you to get you prepared for this. Next slide. So how do I ask any questions due to this video, or how do I get more information about AFIPPS? How do I make sure that if I have a question and I want to see a video, how do I provide my input? Well, here's the site for you. We have a site on the Air Force portal, MyPERS, or email the AFPOA AFIPPS team, and it will answer those questions. We have a Q&A thing already out there, and we have experts that can tell you everything we know as the time. And Eric and I have made a point that we will always tell you the truth. If we think we're not getting what we want, we will tell you that. So that way you're prepared. This is why we've been kind of calm out for a while to make sure that when we tell you what's happening, we can give you accurate information without getting you too worried. And I will confidently tell you that AFIPPS is actually coming and this is going to work because I'm seeing it develop and it's your team that's making this happen. Eric, any comments?
No, I think you covered it. FM and A1 community needs to work together closely. Pre-AFIPPS, make sure that we clean up our records. Without cleaning up the records, we won't be able to go forward. So if you are wondering what you can do right now, please team with your local FSS for the FMers and FSS team together and work through those things you know need to be done. Things like dependency discrepancies and CMS cases. Make sure that you work those down, and this way we pay our airmen correctly today and prepare ourselves for AFIPPS tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a great day.